Welcome, everybody, to the MeidasTouch Attorneys General Town Hall. We have attorneys general from 3 states, and we will be asking them the questions that you wanted answered. From California, we have Attorney General Rob Bonta. From Illinois, we have Attorney General Kwame Raoul. And from Massachusetts, we have Attorney General Andrea Campbell. All 3 attorneys general have faced the Trump invasion with Trump's ICE and Trump's border patrol. They've had to fight back against the various authoritarian tactics from the Trump regime. They've been fighting together as a team as well on a lot of these cases, and they've been succeeding in a lot of these court cases. So as we now move into 2026, what are the reflections? What are the learnings? How are the attorneys generals from these Democratic states fighting back and fighting for the people? Because within these states, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're an independent, what Trump is doing is causing pain and suffering that is avoidable, that is unnecessary, and is not what governing is all about. Let's begin this town hall by doing an opening statement from each of the attorneys generals here about the issues confronting their state and their overall reflections about fighting back. Let's start in California, because that's my home state, with Attorney General Rob Bonta. Attorney General Bonta, your opening statement in the town hall.
Thanks, Ben. I'm honored to be here. Super grateful to be here with my amazing colleagues. And, the takeaway for me for this past year, and as we look forward to the next year, is when we fight, we win. When we fight together, we win even more. And proud to work side by side with a total of 23 Democratic attorneys general, pushing back against the lawlessness, the blatant, the brazen, the consistent, the frequent lawlessness coming out of the Trump administration, and delivering time and time again. And in California, what does it look like? It looked like defending and protecting $168 billion worth of funding that Trump improperly, unlawfully, illegally tried to take away from us. We protected it. We've secured that funding. It's looked like protecting rights and freedoms, like the right to birthright citizenship. If you're born on American soil, you're an American citizen, or like the right to vote. It's looked like pushing the National Guard that was unlawfully federalized and deployed in California out of our state and back under the control of their appropriate commander-in-chief, Governor Gavin Newsom. And it took 6 months of fighting tooth and nail, but we won that one with a U.S. Supreme Court decision coming out of Illinois, which I know my colleague A.G. Raoul will talk about as well. It's looked like protecting families and small businesses and workers who are suffering from the high costs created by unlawful tariffs. And I believe we're on the verge of a U.S. Supreme Court decision in our favor, striking down those tariffs, having been in the courtroom for that argument and hearing the questions and the positions that were indicated from the dais and the bench there. So it's been a year of fighting. And, just to step back, I wish we didn't have this fight, that we didn't have a president of the United States who breaks the law, who tramples over the Constitution, who tramples over rights and freedoms. But if that is his decision, we will meet him at the bounds of his authority every time. He cannot do unlawful things, period, full stop. He has a lot of power, perhaps the most powerful elected official in the world. And if he uses his authority appropriately, he won an election, and he may never advance his agenda unlawfully. And we have built together, the 23 Democratic attorneys general, a legal fortress around the rights and freedoms of Americans, protecting and defending them, a wall of protection that we will stand on and guard and never let the unlawful president cross. And so the president has shown not only no signs of slowing down with his unlawfulness, but also a willingness to escalate, whether it be what we're seeing in Minneapolis with the murder of an American citizen, his ongoing attacks, which are purely partisan. He goes after blue states and blue cities, and he doesn't even hide it anymore. He says the quiet part out loud. It's only getting worse, which means that our role is absolutely critical. We've won 80% of the time, approximately, of our lawsuits. When we win and a court issues an order, the court order is followed. So I want you all to know that. It makes a difference. What we're doing in court the orders we're securing, the blocking and tackling, the stopping of the unlawful action is delivering results. So again, not a lot to ask to have a president of the United States who follows the law, complies with the Constitution, but if he decides not to, we're going to push back and we're going to win in court as we have over the last year. So we look forward to continuing to defend you, your rights, your freedoms, our democracy, separation of powers, checks and balances, and make sure that our unlawful president doesn't hurt you.
Thank you, AG Bonta, for your opening statement. AG Raul from the great state of Illinois, your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me. Thank you for including me with my esteemed colleagues, AG Bonta and AG Campbell, with whom I've had the pleasure of working together with for years and developing friendships and collaboration on other issues, not all focused on fighting federal government overreach. And that collaboration has been important to the work that we've done over the course of the last year. And of course, we connected way before the inauguration of President Trump in his second term, realizing that we needed to be prepared. And that preparation has really paid off. As AG Bonta said, we are challenging these actions of overreach in court, and we are being successful in doing so. For us here in Illinois, Chicago is frequently targeted by the Trump administration. President Trump loves to say disparaging things about our city, our state, and our city and state leaders, and carrying out actions that target us based on politics, not on good policy approaches. One that we're dealing with right now, and we just filed a lawsuit just days ago on Monday, is the way civil immigration enforcement is being carried out. And I want to be clear, we don't challenge the notion of civil immigration enforcement taking place, but we want it to take place the way that Congress has set the parameters for it to take place, not having untrained Border Patrol agents acting to exercise practices that are unconstitutional, that are offensive, that to both citizens and non-citizens, including tear gassing law-abiding citizens and law enforcement officers. We've had some of our Chicago police officers suffer from being targeted with tear gas, having our courthouses, our schoolhouses, daycare centers, and other sensitive areas raided by CBP agents and ICE agents. We believe that the targeted immigration enforcement by ERO agents is the appropriate way to do it. We are not on a border, and so it's inappropriate for CBP to be in our presence. We were successful in fighting the deployment of the National Guard into our city and our state. We were challenged all the way to the Supreme Court, and we were successful at the Supreme Court. I think it's a very important decision. And one of the things that many people have missed in that decision is that Justice Kavanaugh did an about-face on a policy that he had embraced with regards to allowing for immigration stops to be able to take place based on race or what people look like. And he did an about-face on that, hidden in a footnote in the National Guard case. So we look at that success as an important one, because I think a lot of people had lost hope and had drawn to the conclusion that, notwithstanding what we were doing in our lawsuits at the district court level or at the Court of Appeals level, that the Supreme Court would come in all cases and weigh in on behalf of the president. We've proven that not to be the case. And so our fight is not futile.
Thank you, AG Raoul, the great state of Illinois. Let's turn to AG Campbell from Massachusetts. AG Campbell, your opening statement. Then we're going to go and get the questions from our viewers who asked you questions, and we're going to be going into the town hall style next, and we'll do it in reverse order also. So after your opening statement, AG Campbell, we'll then start with you to answer the first question in the town hall. So your opening statement, AG Campbell.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you to your team for having us. I'm honored to be on, not just with my colleagues, but dear friends, AG Bonta, AG Raoul from California and Illinois. We do this work in collaboration every day, along with our incredible Democratic AG colleagues all across the country. And sadly, as we stand up to hold the president accountable and to do it in such a way not only upholding the rule of law and the Constitution, but to protect our residents and our state economies, not one Republican AG has joined our efforts. And we will keep fighting with joy, with integrity, and a sense of exceptionalism. I will just say, as we do this work, the Massachusetts impacts have been enormous. We've filed now close to 47 lawsuits. And those lawsuits have tried to protect billions of dollars in Massachusetts investments. And what does that mean? The Trump administration has tried to come after $3.27 billion in Massachusetts investments, and our 45 plus lawsuits have protected $3.11 billion of Massachusetts investments. So all of us, as we do this work, we are truly winning, as AG Bonta said, and folks should recognize that. They should have a sense of hope and joy, even in the midst of this darkness, and to know that their Democratic AGs have their backs. As we do this Trump work of holding this administration accountable, let's be clear, these are real people we're talking about. We're protecting folks' SNAP benefits. We're protecting infrastructure projects and transportation projects. We're protecting jobs. We're protecting workers. We're protecting mental health services, services for opioid addiction. We're protecting our children, our public schools and public education, our libraries, our museums, our cultural institutions. The list is long in terms of everything we're doing in our power to push back. But while we do this work to hold the Trump administration accountable, let's be clear, affordability and the cost of living is still the number one issue here in Massachusetts and across this country. And I'm really proud to be working with Democratic AGs that while we're holding ICE accountable, while we're holding the Trump administration accountable, we are still focusing on the issues that our constituents care about the most. We're holding corporate landlords accountable for jacking up rents. We're holding utility companies accountable. We're holding companies accountable for harming and stealing and defrauding our consumers and our elders. We're making sure that affordability is still front of mind. So we're running a parallel track in many ways to protect our people and their rights, to hold up the Constitution and the rule of law, to ensure the economy continues to operate, and most importantly, address the issue of affordability. And I'm proud to be doing that with my colleagues because we do not have a federal partner at all when it comes to the issue of affordability and the cost of living crisis that folks are experiencing every single day. And so we'll keep doing the work with joy, integrity, and most importantly, serving folks regardless of what letters by their name. We don't care if you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican. We see the humanity in everyone. And we frankly want our states to continue to thrive and to prosper. And we know we can't do that by just focusing on what's happening in our individual states. It truly will take a collective effort to push back in these unprecedented times. So thank you for having me, and honored to be on here with my colleagues.
Thank you so much, everybody, for that opening statement right there. So we then opened it up to our approximately 1 million followers on Substack to ask us the questions that they wanted us to ask you. And we tried to aggregate them so that the questions that were most asked are put forward during this town hall. Now, this question comes from Cindy R., and AG Campbell will ask you this question first. And we're going to play the video so you can see the question. People submitted videos of themselves. And a common question that we were being asked, though, is that there are a lot of crimes or apparent crimes being committed by this Trump administration or regime in states. these ICE officers seem to be being engaged in crimes, and lots of other crimes are taking place in the state by Trump officials. And what people want to know is, since the DOJ is obviously not going to do anything about it, can AGs do anything about this to hold people accountable if crimes are being committed, and what that looks like and when? So let's play Cindy R's question.
So hypothetically, if Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Kristi Noem are not impeached or kicked out of office before the end of the administrative term, could charges still be brought against them after they're out? And would there be jail time for them? Not judging, but they should be kicked out of office before, but hypothetically, would it be possible? And this question is for any one of you. Thank you.
Let's just go around in general. AG Campbell, you can go first, then AG Raul, then AG Bonta.
Thank you, Cindy, for the question. Obviously, nothing's off the table in looking at holding officials accountable when they leave office. And I do hope they are replaced by folks who will put forward policies that are humane and not cruel, as they're doing every single day. So nothing's off the table in terms of accountability. Right now, I am focused on how we hold folks accountable in this moment. And it's not easy to do. As we look at folks in Massachusetts in particular, and of course in Minnesota, Illinois, California, and other states, and we're seeing the surge of ICE officials coming into our communities and at times rounding up citizens, rounding up unlawfully people who are here lawfully, detaining folks and kidnapping folks off the street who have no public safety record or criminal record whatsoever. It is disheartening. It is disappointing. It is upsetting, to say the least. And so we're doing what we can in rapid response to ensure that folks, one, know what their rights are, to ensure folks have access to lawyers if they're unlawfully detained. And where we can hold ICE officials accountable, we will do so. But let's be clear, it's very difficult for state AGs to hold federal employees accountable because of qualified immunity, because of other protections that they have. It really should be the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Department of Justice holding them accountable. We know they're not doing that. So I'm really proud to have seen AG Raul, for example, AG Ellison in Minnesota, given the egregious and horrific murder of a constituent there in Minnesota, to hold ICE accountable. Those are challenging cases, but I'm proud to stand with them and to support them as they hold ICE officials accountable, with the long-term goal of always thinking about how we hold these folks accountable in the long term. But in the immediate, we're doing everything in our power to hold folks accountable as they bring about really egregious behavior and conduct within our respective states.
AG Raul, same question to you by Cindy R. Can there be steps that AGs do in terms of prosecuting crimes that are happening inside the state that may be committed by federal employees or agents who are engaged in tactics, excessive force, or the like?
Well, I'll tackle the same question with the same answer. We are right now in this moment, we're focused on the tools that we can effectively use in this moment to fight against some of these unlawful actions. That doesn't mean that we remove possibilities for criminal prosecution or investigatory responses in the future, or even right now. I know the circumstances in Minnesota, for example, should involve an investigation both at the federal and state level with collaboration. Unfortunately, the federal government is blocking Minnesota law enforcement authorities from collaborating, as we routinely do with our federal law enforcement partners. And one of the unfortunate outgrowths of the federal overreach and the the audaciousness of this administration and in its violation of the law and historic policies and practices, is that it undermines the collaboration of local, state, and federal law enforcement. One of the things that we can't ignore is that this president has misused the power of pardon. So with regards to the notion of any future federal administration investigating some of the criminal acts, potential criminal acts of whether it's agents or members of the administration, those can be undermined by the notion of the president pardoning those individuals. Such pardons do not apply to state cases, though, and so notwithstanding that, as A.G. Campbell pointed out, the prosecution of federal authorities who enjoy certain immunities are challenging, but nothing is removed from the table.
A.G. Bonta, finally, we go to you, and then we'll start with you for the next round of questions. We got, just so everybody knows, this was the main question. This was the question that, like, you know, you win 80% of the time in the courts. We got 80% of our questions on this issue because people are saying, if we have a justice system, A.G. Bonta, how could we see the people committing the crimes, but they're not doing the time? It doesn't make sense.
100%. And that you know, that's an appropriate concern and worry. I'll first say absolutely 100%. Attorneys general who have criminal prosecution authority, that includes me, have the opportunity and the ability, the power and the authority to prosecute state crimes within our state, period, full stop. Just to back up a little, generally, federal prosecutors prosecute federal crimes and state prosecutors prosecute state crimes. At the federal level, that means the United States Department of Justice, the U.S. attorneys, if they see federal actors involved in crime without fear or favor, fair and objectively, based on the facts and the law, they should be prosecuting lawbreakers. Unfortunately, we don't expect that. With big dose of realism here, based on the way that this federal government has acted, I don't see them spending a lot of time, having a lot of focus or interest in holding accountable federal criminal actors. In fact, we've seen the opposite. We've seen the weaponization of the U.S. DOJ. We've seen them engaged in political persecution instead of criminal prosecution with respect to the prosecution and indictment of our own colleague, A.G. Tish James and James Comey, which they fell flat, with Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney, being used to do the bidding of Donald Trump. So that's the federal side. When state crimes are committed in California or other states, state criminal prosecutors can prosecute, including AGs. And this is despite what Vice President J.D. Vance has wrongly said about his proposition that ICE agents and those federal officials engaged in their official duties have absolute immunity. Absolutely not true that they have absolute immunity. They do have qualified immunity, but they can be prosecuted for crime. And if the standard is met, if they're doing something that is not reasonably necessary to their official role, if it's not necessary and proper to their official duties, if they murder somebody, if they batter somebody, if they rob somebody, if they assault somebody, they can be held accountable. There's no such thing as having a pass, having carte blanche, having license to commit crime just because you have your ICE uniform on. Not true. And so I know there's a lot of bluster and bullying and intimidation and statements about purported absolute immunity, but they don't have it. They can be prosecuted. They will be prosecuted under the right circumstances. And I think our own colleague in Minneapolis is working on reviewing at least the shooting of Miss Renee Good, to see if there's criminal liability there. So the short answer is yes. We can hold federal officials accountable for committing crime if they commit crimes that violate state criminal laws in our states.
Now, to all the attorneys general, a common question that we've been getting, and someone by the name of Dan M asked this question, is just your general view about what the DOJ has become. Now, the DOJ was once the gold standard. I mean, when I went to law school, the top students would try their best to get a job at the DOJ. And it was, really, maybe you'd clerk at a judge, work at the DOJ. And you may disagree with prosecutorial decisions that were made in past DOJs, but you never also doubted their competence, that they weren't going to turn over the discovery on the deadline, or they weren't going to just miss basic things in their briefings. And so there's kind of a corruption piece of this, but also an incompetence piece to it. And then layer on top of that the fact that you have a lot of United States attorneys who are actually not appropriately appointed and confirmed, who are running these departments, and the judges are saying, you haven't been confirmed, you're not an appropriate interim, get out. And they're not getting out. Like, imagine if one of you were just pretending to be the attorney general of your state and you weren't really the attorney general of the state. So people just want your overall perspective of, what do you make of just this? You litigate against them every day. So what's your perspective of what the Department of Justice has become under Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche? And we'll start with AG Bonta on that one.
It's been a sad and unfortunate demise of the United States Department of Justice in terms of their reputation, the trust that they have lost with the people of this nation. It's been a precipitous drop, and it's earned. You earn trust. You're not just given it. It's based on your actions, your values, the principles that you uphold, how you deliver justice. Is it blind and fair and even-handed? Is it without fear or favor? And it's been the opposite. It's been completely manipulated. Trump is putting U.S. attorneys in place that can't even get confirmed, and then trying to keep them there. And judges are telling them to get out, as you mentioned. And some are staying and calling themselves, FA, first assistant, and acting as the U.S. attorney when they're not the U.S. attorney. We're seeing Trump's own U.S. attorneys who don't do his bidding replaced by another U.S. attorney with no criminal experience, Lindsey Halligan, so that they will go down his enemies list and prosecute the people he has demanded to be prosecuted, although the facts and the law don't support it. And so, you lose trust when you do that. People don't like that. They don't think it's right. They don't think that is how a U.S. Department of Justice should act. So, and just look at people who are voting with their feet. The morale is at an all-time low. People are fleeing and leaving. I find it very sad and wrong because I love this country, and our U.S. DOJ should be at the highest level. But we are also benefiting here at the California Attorney General's office because those people are coming to my office. And other offices around the country, bringing their talents to those AG offices because we are delivering justice the way it should be. And so the reputation has dropped precipitously. It's been earned by their own behavior, their own action, their own pulling away from the time-honored traditions and principles that have led the U.S. DOJ in the past, but sadly not now, to have a reputation of the highest order.
Yeah, and now turning to AG Raul, I mean, we know they're doing bad things, and we can talk about that, but also the competence. Like, after I graduated from law school, presenting yourself in a prepared way, just before the judge, just doing the day-to-day blocking and tackling and respecting court orders. I mean, you saw the Lindsey Halligan briefing before Judge Novak, a Trump-appointed judge, where she attacks Judge Novak and basically says, how dare you tell me not to put my name as the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia? I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm reading this thing and I'm like, good gosh, he's speaking to a federal judge that way. What are you doing? What do you make of that all? This was a common question we were asked as well.
Yeah, I think Rob hit it on the nail. I mean, I think two things. One, as you've both stated, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, Main Justice, has has lost its esteem, its how people perceive it, which is consequential, to how people perceive the justice system at large. If you can't trust that Maine justice is going to operate with integrity, how can you have a trust in our system at large? And it's reflected in what we've seen, certainly here in the state of Illinois, but in other jurisdictions with regards to prosecutions that have been initiated that have ended in no bills before grand juries. We have had an unprecedented number of no bills delivered by grand juries, meaning that the grand juries have declined to indict individuals that justice law enforcement agents have brought to them. There's an old saying about indicting, how easy it would be to indict a ham sandwich. It is unprecedented to have this many indictments rejected by the people who fill in on grand juries. With regards to on the local level at various districts, U.S. attorneys' offices, there's been an attrition. Some of it has been driven by self-evaluation of whether esteemed attorneys feel comfortable being part of this Department of Justice, being part of the various U.S. attorney offices, being asked to do things that are inappropriate, that don't follow historic policies. And we've seen that recently in Minnesota. We've seen it in other U.S. attorney's office on the East Coast. And similar to Rob's situation in California, we've been the beneficiary of that. And there's been there have been a few folks that we have picked up, very talented attorneys who have left the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we should be concerned about that. One of the things to be clear is I came in halfway through Trump's first tenure as president. And on the local level, we have had great collaboration with the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as the FBI, the DEA, ATF, Homeland Security Investigations, Secret Service, and other agencies on fighting crime, real crime. And those efforts have been undermined by the loss of prosecutors, the loss of FBI agents who have been targeted because they may have been assigned to a January 6th investigation, the redeployment of FBI, DEA, ATF agents to doing civil immigration work instead of work focused on fighting crime. All of these things put together undermine the ability of us collectively being able to effectively fight crime.
Appreciate the response. And AG Campbell, same question, just about your interactions with the Department of Justice. Litigated lots of cases against them. You see how their teams are comprised, their preparation or lack thereof before judges. What has been your experience?
Just to pick up on what AG Raul said, which I think is extremely important, this dysfunction that we're seeing from the Department of Justice, the lack of integrity, the lack of exceptionalism in doing our work, the lack of just trust between that agency and the public, not only undermines our entire system of justice, which is built on trust and transparency and, of course, accountability. If we truly say no one is above the law, then no one should be deemed above the law. And instead, what we're seeing is a president who thinks he is above the law and an administration that thinks they are above the law, undermining and dismantling an agency that is critical to maintaining this sense of justice in this country. Everyone should be concerned about that. If you are an average person that goes out on the street and harms someone, we hold you accountable. You're not treated any different. So why should a president or someone with power be treated any differently? And the Department of Justice is doing just that. And so there is power in the people in saying, we don't want that anymore. This is where civic engagement and voting comes in to say, we're going to replace those folks because they should not be given free license to do whatever they want, particularly by the Department of Justice. And on the other real impacts here is not only a lack of accountability for folks who are not holding everyone accountable into the same standard when it comes to justice. We, in my office, similar to California, Illinois, not every attorney general and not every Democratic AG has criminal jurisdiction. Here in Massachusetts, we do. We have the ability to prosecute crimes, and we do that every day. We are looking to take guns off the street because gun trafficking is still real. We are looking to take drugs off the street to keep our communities safe. I have a state police unit within my office that works hard every single day with a sense of integrity, transparency. They're unmasked as they do this work and real accountability. The same is true in other states. When we have a federal partner that helps us with this work, that allows us to take more guns off the street. That allows us to take more drugs off the street. That allows us to redirect our law enforcement efforts to ways in which to really keep folks safe. So it's not just about affordability that people care about. They want their children to be safe. They want their grandparents to be safe. They themselves want to be safe. And so we're having to fill the void on some of these public safety concerns because we don't have a Department of Justice that we can collaborate with. We don't have a U.S. Attorney's Office that we can collaborate with as we did with predecessors. So we'll keep doing the work, but this is something, again, as every issue that we're tackling as Democratic AGs, that every constituent, every resident in this country should care about.
Even though this wasn't a question, I want to home in on what you just said there about collaboration. Normally you have like joint task forces, you work together. That's part of the way you stop crime. You stop the trafficking and the drugs and all of the horrible stuff. You have joint task forces. So let's get that question, AG Campbell, to you first. Like, do those not exist anymore? Do they exist? How do you deal with people when you're supposed to work in these joint task forces to stop all the bad stuff and they don't even interact? What's that level of communication like?
We're doing our best, and I think AG Bonta and AG Raul would say the same thing, to continue that collaboration. I was just on the radio yesterday. I said President Trump could call me personally, along with the U.S. Attorney, to really talk about ways to collaborate on affordability and public safety. But they're not doing that. And that's the sad part. There is no desire to collaborate. So these task forces still exist to be able to take guns and drugs off the street. And we are continuing to do that very well through at least my office. But at the staff and team level, it's much more difficult when you have members of these task forces from the federal side that are federal employees that are being redirected to immigration enforcement instead of human trafficking, instead of gun trafficking, instead of drug trafficking. So you're seeing a lot of federal employees either leave because they said we didn't sign up for this. You're seeing morale decline. You're seeing a desire, frankly, not to participate in certain types of immigration efforts. Because as one local law enforcement person said recently to one of my people, why would I want to go into a restaurant and go into a kitchen and pull out a man who's working hard, who has no criminal record, all to try to reach some numbers of immigration enforcement by this president? And to add one point on this public safety piece, the beautiful bill, $75 billion was given for immigration enforcement. That is larger than the entire Massachusetts state budget, which is a little over $60 billion. And so that's what we're up against as we're trying to do public safety the right way. You have an administration that is investing in hiring officers that are less skilled, not really trained to do immigration enforcement and not help us with drug trafficking, gun trafficking, human trafficking, the real crime that needs to be stopped in our respective states.
AG Bonta, same question for you. We hear Governor Newsom talk about this as well, and all the governors of your various states, but I've spoken to Governor Newsom about this at length. The joint task forces, the way you actually stop crime, and now the DOJ's moved its resources, the FBI moved its resources away from that. What are you seeing in California?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same things, and the joint task forces have been historically, very, very effective in tackling crime, combating crime, being by the side of our Californians as we keep them safe and keep communities and neighborhoods safe. And a lot of folks, as mentioned, are being redeployed to do immigration enforcement instead of fighting crime. And we want to fight crime. We have task forces that have been in place for years that tackle fentanyl trafficking, gun trafficking, human trafficking. And though depleted on the federal side and morale low, those that remain, I think, want to just do a job. They just want to get the bad guys and fight crime. Federal side, state side as well. You know, I've always said we will fight Trump every time he breaks the law. It hurts our state. But if there's places and spaces where we can work together for the benefit of Californians, Americans, let's do it. One of them should be fighting crime. But Trump has, pulled the rug out from underneath his federal teams by redeploying them. And so the morale is low, but those who remain, I think, just want to do a job. And so we've still been able to work in some joint task forces, but they've been weakened and disempowered. My team's still strong, but on the federal side, because of Trump's actions, they've gotten weaker. And I think the federal contributions have not been what they have been historically.
AG Bonta, a lot of questions into all the AGs, a lot of questions about people feeling betrayed by the United States Supreme Court and how they use their shadow docket. And while they purport not to be making rulings on the merit, what they do by preserving the status quo under Trump's violation of the law versus the status quo that it existed before Trump does something, it serves to allow, until the case gets back to the Supreme Court, which can take many, many, many years if it ever gets back, for Trump's policies to stay in place. And it seems that the Supreme Court tries to clean its hands from doing this by saying, we're just doing a procedural thing. We're just staying the district court's order. I know you also spoke about still winning 80% of the cases, and not all of these cases even reach the Supreme Court level. So how do you address people who are just concerned that, all right, Ben, you're covering this case, but it's just going to go to the Supreme Court and they're going to shadow docket us and just say that Trump can continue on and preserve Trump's status quo. So what's the point? What's the point of all of this? It's kind of a question that I get. If you're just going to lose in the Supreme Court, what do you say to that?
Yeah, first I say most cases don't get to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we're securing victories in federal trial courts all across the country. And if they get appealed to the intermediate appellate court, we're winning with a high propensity there. And most cases never get to the U.S. Supreme Court. And also the Trump administration oftentimes, more frequently, more recently, throws in the towel, waves the white flag, and cries uncle and says, we lose, we give up. We will do the thing you said we should always have done. We will end the illegal action. We'll give the funding, or we'll stop the unlawful action, and it's over. And once they decide to do that, we memorialize that in front of a court with a stipulated agreement, and there's no appeal. It cannot go to the U.S. Supreme Court. It will not go to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we're locking in the win when Trump waves the white flag and throws in the towel. But yes, the emergency docket, the shadow docket, has been very problematic. It's been used more frequently recently. You don't have a full line of sight into what's happening. You don't have full merits briefing. You don't have a full argument like you do on a case that comes to the U.S. Supreme Court on the merits. You don't even have a sense unless you try to figure it out with the math, if there's a dissent or a concurrence, who's in the majority. And you don't even have always a fully reasoned opinion to guide the lower courts and how to comply with whatever the U.S. Supreme Court has decided. So it's very problematic. And interestingly, in the most recent U.S. Supreme Court shadow docket decision on the National Guard issue coming out of Illinois, there were a number of U.S. Supreme Court justices who were decrying the use of the shadow docket on important issues and criticizing it. And I decry it too. I agree on that. But we got a really good decision from the U.S. Supreme Court on the National Guard issue that ended effectively any further use of 10 USC 12406 to deploy National Guard. I think on the tariffs issue, the Supreme Court, based on the argument, will strike down the tariffs as as not having appropriate authority under IEPA. So sometimes the Supreme Court, follows the law and the facts to get to a good decision, and we've seen that sometimes. But the shadow docket has been absolutely problematic.
AG Raul, your overall perspective on how the Supreme Court has dealt with cases that you've been leading or you've joined with the other AGs on?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Rob said. Most cases don't get there, right? And we've had successes that have resolved themselves after we get an injunction with the federal government agreeing to restore funding or otherwise yield on the demands that we've made in our pleadings. I think, interestingly, again, I don't want to be a broken record on this. And in a National Guard case, in a previous case, Justice Kavanaugh had made the decision with regards to what became to be known as Kavanaugh stops out of these hasty sort of shadow docket decisions, and one that I suppose that over time he's reflected upon and utilized because the issue was not really raised as much as a pertinent issue with regards to the National Guard deployment, but he used the National Guard case to go back on what he had intimated in a previous a case. And I think that's kind of important because it reflects the importance of the public's, outrage, the notion that people started talking about referring to these as Kavanaugh stops, that the notion that people can be stopped based on their race, on their language, or what they look like, is not consistent with our Constitution. And with the general philosophy. I just want to take just one quick moment because I didn't get a chance to respond to the question with regards to the existence of task force and collaboration and so forth. That continues to exist. It has been undermined. I do believe in our case, I've spent a lot of time since the outset of my tenure building relationships with our federal law enforcement partners, and they've sustained even through this difficult time where some of their forces have been redeployed to civil immigration work. The president has used Chicago as crime as an excuse for his immigration enforcement surges, notwithstanding the fact that most people who have been detained or taken into custody have no criminal background. And notwithstanding the fact that we have existing great collaboration with I'll use ATF, for example. The president often refers to the Venezuelan gangs. Well, my office has 15 prosecutions underway with members of Tren de Agua out of collaboration with the ATF, and we are prosecuting those cases, not the U.S. Attorney's office. And there are other cases that I can point to that these collaborations have led to prosecutions of both non-citizens as well as citizens who are violating the law. So they continue to exist, but the fact that these agencies have had their funding impacted, have had their capacity impacted by redeployment of their agents, makes it more difficult.
And AG Raul, I apologize for not calling you on that one. I'll start with, I didn't even realize I did that. So let me start with you on this next question, AG Raul, which is victims' rights. Very important issue. And people should note that in your offices, you have entire offices devoted to working with victims. and particularly victims of sex crimes or trafficking. It's the most delicate area too, because people can be re-traumatized in the filings. And I just want our audience to understand, because I used to litigate cases like this on the civil side that had criminal dimensions. The AG's offices and previously the DOJ would spend extraordinary amounts of time with the victims, offer counseling, and just be there with the victims as an ally and shoulder to shoulder. And so you contrast that. And if people wanted to get your perspective on Trump's cover-up of the Epstein files, not turning over the documents and all of that. But I want to extend it more broadly, though, to the arena of just how offices are supposed to interact with victims or survivors. And also, I think the lack of credibility on a case like the Epstein one, where the DOJ was saying, we only have a few 100,000 documents. And when I litigated cases, I would always talk about terabytes, and you could fill up 3 to 4 buildings, 80 stories high with documents. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if you're saying that, which we know now, that Epstein had a $1.1 billion money laundering scheme alongside the trafficking that he was doing, just the financial records alone are probably tens of millions of documents, yet alone all the other stuff. And I know when your offices handle this, I know it's a very long wind up right here, but I want to get these points. And, you have auditors go through each line on a day-to-day basis, month-to-month basis, seeing if there are transactions. And like when the DOJ talks about this stuff, to me, they're speaking in a foreign language that isn't what I've ever been used to as a litigator when I talk about electronically stored information, document productions. And I'm like, what do you even mean? 100,000 pages? What are you talking about? So I just want to start with your overall just perspective, AG Raul, on, to me, their lack of empathy or help for victims, rushing to Ghislaine Maxwell to take her, moving her to what's your overall view of all of that?
Yeah, the whole special meeting with the high-level DOJ official with Ghislaine Maxwell is astounding. It's an astounding step backwards to all the work that has been done to improve upon how we interact with victims who have been traumatized and experienced the worst experiences of their lives. I've spent a lot of my time, investing in and trying to advance as a state legislator before I became Attorney General on making certain that law enforcement approaches victims in a trauma-informed manner. We have trauma recovery centers, and we've learned a lot from what had occurred in California, in Rob's state, with advancing a trauma-informed approach to dealing with victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, gun violence, and as I mentioned, gun violence. We enhanced kind of moving gun violence into the same space and the same level of importance, because there had been sort of a bias against victims of gun violence, because let's just say, because in some instances the victims may have been individuals who were previously criminally involved, but a victim is a victim. And to have a circumstance right now where not only are we sending messages in terms of how the Department of Justice has dealt with the Epstein files and so forth, but attempts to disinvest in the ability to offer these services to victims on the local level, whether it's VOCA funding or other funding for victims. And then finally, undermining how we treat victims who may be undocumented immigrants. It's important to note that if you have Border Patrol and ICE agents reporting to court, making it such that victims who may be undocumented immigrants or witnesses who may be undocumented immigrants are afraid to show up to court. Well, so what does that do to our public safety? It makes it such that prosecutors can't make their cases, and perpetrators of murder and other crimes are set free. And so it is the opposite of what it reaches the opposite end of what is being claimed as to why these surges are taking place. If you recall, prior to these immigration enforcement surges, the reason being given by the president has been to deal with crime. And it's doing the opposite. It's undermining our ability to deal with crime, in part because we are mistreating these victims.
Yeah. A.G. Campbell, let's go to you next. I just remember when I would litigate these cases in the civil forum that often had these criminal aspects of them as well. I would meet with people like you, and you would have huge teams and counselors and resources, and there would be constant check-ins. How's your client doing? Anything that we can do at all? When we would show up at a court appearance, we would be met right away in the lobby by somebody. That's how it should be. And we've worked hard as a society to get there. And I don't want people to forget about it. And so I thought that's why this was a good question to ask in this town hall. So what's your response to everything you've seen, not just with the cover up of the Epstein files, but how they have dealt with the survivors?
It's atrocious, to say the least. Obviously not in the weeds on Epstein, but obviously, like everybody else, have been following the cover up, the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability, and listening to the heart-wrenching stories of the families of the victims. And let's be clear, it takes tremendous courage to come forward to report any type of crime, including crimes where you have been physically, mentally, spiritually violated. And to come forth, especially knowing that the person who has perpetuated that crime on you has power, has resources, has access to folks who will try to not hold that person accountable. And that's what we're seeing. And it's in stark contrast, as A.G. Raoul said, of what we do every single day as state AGs. We come across folks all the time that are victims of crime, and we support those victims regardless of their status. It does not matter what your demographic is. If you're a victim of crime here in Massachusetts, you deserve to be treated with respect, with dignity, with compassion, empathy, and care, and to know that you have someone on your side. If you've exercised that courage to come forward, the least we can do is exercise courage in holding people accountable and doing it in such a way that honors our justice system and the rights of everyone involved. That's what we do. And as Massachusetts AG, I have a very unique role in that I not only have victim witness advocates in my office constantly meeting with victims and going through the process with these, not just victims, but survivors to bring about accountability. They are in constant communication, working with our Crim Bureau, working with our law enforcement and state police officers, working with our prosecutors. It's a full team. In addition to that, I chair the board of MOVA, which is the Massachusetts Office of Victim Assistance, that receives millions of dollars to help victims of all types of crimes. And sadly, as we continue to help victims, we have a federal administration working against us. They have tried to take away billions of dollars in victim supports, in victim resources, in our ability to fund victim advocates, and our ability to provide the programming and culturally competent program that victims need. And it's not always just about their individual crime. When folks come forward, they're doing it to protect other possible victims in the future. They're doing it to protect their family and our communities as a whole. So we're standing up as AGs to protect the system that has been created. And it has taken time and years of work of so many advocates before me to build this system that centers victims in their stories and of course allows survivors to be a part of the process and holding folks accountable. In addition to protecting them and that system itself of service delivery, we also will continue to push back on this administration that is not helping us with public safety, that is not helping us help victims, and certainly not helping victims become survivors, where then they become the very leaders themselves that help us do this work going forward. So those who are often voiceless, invisible, and don't get the attention they deserve.
AG Bonta, same question to you. I also note that in the DOJ's filings to federal judges and their other public statements, they've claimed that they have 125 lawyers from SDNY working on the document production alone. 125 lawyers. Boy, I wish when I was a lawyer, I had a team of 125 people working on a doc production. When I handled a notable case in California for a receiver of the SEC, this guy by the name of Thomas Seaman, in the MedCap Ponzi scheme cases, which were very prevalent. It was prevalent in California. People know about that there. It was a 5 to 6 terabyte case. So we dealt with 35, 40 million documents. I had about 5 associates with me on my team, and it took us about 45 to 60 days. We may have asked for one extension, but we coded, we had everything. We did, 15, 18-hour days as you ought do when you're an associate working at it. But when you when they give these numbers, I'm like 125 people. I could have done that in 5 days with that number. So it's the BS, and it is the harm to the victims as well. And because our audience isn't necessarily doing these document productions the way we all probably have at some point, I don't think they realize just what BS it is that the DOJ is saying about everything. It's like, what are you even talking about?
The BS, unfortunately, is on brand for this administration, and important for us to call it out and to be truth seekers and truth tellers. When it comes to the Epstein files and the treatment of the victims, the Trump administration has been a complete embarrassment. It's been disgusting, turning their back on victims, lying, gaslighting, politicizing, devaluing and undermining and disrespecting victims along the way, silencing them instead of treating them the way victims and survivors should be treated. And I couldn't be more proud of my own team at the California AG's office. What you were describing, Ben, is what we do. We have a victim services unit that delivers trauma-informed support and victim-centered services to victims of crime. From the very beginning, when they need a safe place, we help find housing, clothing, food. We make sure that they get the healing that they need on their journey towards healing, whether it be mental health support or other services or programs to support them and their families. We make sure they have a person, a human being that gives them respect and dignity, that provides compassion, empathy, love to them, someone that they can talk to when they have a question as they go through a legal process that's confusing, intimidating, scary sometimes. We make sure they know what their rights are to have their voice in the courtroom when they need to make a victim statement or even testify if that's what they want. And that make sure they have the support, the emotional support of our team as they do that, as they show breathtaking courage and in very intimidating situations. So that's how it should be done. Every one of these victims should have someone who supports them and who's guiding them along the way and getting them what they need, just as you described. I'm proud that my team does that to the best of our ability, but the Trump administration has completely fallen down on the job there, and in fact, unfortunately, is anti-victim and has turned victims.
I want to thank everybody for submitting those questions. Let's just do a closing statement now from each of the AGs. And again, to extend my apologies for missing AG Raul on that question. I'm going to start with you because I'm sorry I missed you on that last question. But I want you to try to direct this message to your state in particular, and also to the American people. And of course, top of mind right now is what ICE and Border Patrol are doing. But you each have handled hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of other cases that touch upon everything from SNAP to education to healthcare to museums in your states and cities, you name it, universities, under attack from all aspects. And we could probably spend 8 to 12 hours just going through universities, healthcare, SNAP. We're not going to do that, though. So in the closing remarks, though, perhaps you can highlight something as well that maybe attention also as some of these other things that we've discussed, but that also you're particularly proud about doing for your state that you think was something that shows this is why I became an AG, and this is a result that now has led to X. So why don't we start with you, AG Raul?
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to have this discussion and have my wonderful colleagues with me. A lot of this work has been personal for me. When we started out with the first case being led by Massachusetts and Washington on birthright citizenship, it's personal to me as a child of Haitian immigrants and having a mother who was not yet naturalized at the time of my birth. Our case with NIH grants that deal with medical research for things like Alzheimer's and cancer, making sure that the funding would flow as Congress set out, and they partnered with A.G. Campbell on leading that. That's personal to me as a cancer survivor of the cancer that killed my father and both of my grandfathers. And this most recent case with regards to Border Patrol is an important one because what that involved weeks and months of work on the part of lawyers within my office of gathering information that comes from the people at large. So we didn't have staff out at the ICE Center in Broadview, Illinois, collecting information. That information has come in from the people who were on the ground, either protesting or observing. And it's important because it gives the people at large a role in the fighting that we are doing. This last case that we filed, we wouldn't be able to have the information that we have to base our claims on without the participation of the public at large. So there is a role for the public at large to play in the work that we do. The other thing that I frequently refer to is Justice Roberts spoke to law students at Georgetown last May, and he said then that the rule of law was under threat. He kind of took a step backwards a few weeks ago and said the rule of law is in great state, great condition. It was a little bit inconsistent with what he had said 5 or 6 months earlier. But what I took from his first statement with regards to the state of the rule of law being under threat is that it's important for people not to be numbed by the wide variety of actions, audacious actions that are being taken by this federal administration, numbed into thinking that I'm tired of hearing about all this because your rights are on the line. It's important that we go back to understanding civics as we were taught in Schoolhouse Rock, the separation of powers that is consistent theme through many, if not all of our cases, that not only that we understand it as lawyers who are presenting this case, but that the public at large not become constitutional scholars, but understand just the fundamentals that we learned are being attacked. It's in our National Guard case, the district court judge went all the way back to Federalist 29 to explain that that Alexander Hamilton thought, when other delegates were arguing, that it's preposterous that when the other delegates were arguing that the state militias of one state would be potentially sent into another state, that Alexander Hamilton said that's preposterous. That would never happen. Well, we've arrived to that moment. That moment that is inconsistent with what our founding fathers envisioned for this country. And so the public vigilant and not get numbed by all of these actions.
A.G. Campbell, same question to you. And so much to focus on, but perhaps focus on some of the things that haven't necessarily, we've talked a lot about what's been in the major headlines recently, but your office is doing so much to fight for Massachusetts behind the scenes. So can you talk to that and anything else you want to say in your closing statement?
First of all, thank you for having us, and I'm delighted, of course, to be on with A.G. Bonta and A.G. Raoul. And what I love about our Democratic AGs, because sadly not one Republican AG has joined us, and not for lack of trying to get them to be a part of this federal accountability work, is all of us do this work because it's not just the moral and right thing to do and our professional responsibility to protect our residents and our state economies. It's also personal for us. So when fighting as a collective on birthright citizenship, I kept reflecting on the fact that as the first Black AG of Massachusetts and the first woman of color to win statewide office here in Massachusetts and be elected, I can't do that. I can't vote without the 14th Amendment. I can't run for office without the 14th Amendment, established 150 years ago, that dealt with the question of what do we do with those Black folks who were formerly enslaved? Do we make them citizens and give them the rights and privileges of this country? And we resolved that question. And now we have an administration that's trying to unravel that. And the fact that's where they started speaks to the vitriol and the animosity, I would say, that exists within this administration to divide us, to ensure that certain folks in this country are devalued, that their humanity is devalued. And so I'm proud to continue to stand up with AGs to fight back, to protect the interests of Massachusetts. But it's bigger than Massachusetts, because in addition to birthright citizenship, I reflect on SNAP benefits and us coming together on SNAP. I grew up poor in the city of Boston. I was on SNAP benefits. I would not be here without the privilege and also without government working to help my family. So we're fighting back against administration and a government that is looking to harm families, not help folks. So all of this work for us is personal, and this is why we are fighting even with targets on our back to protect the democratic values of this country, to protect the rights and privileges of all of us, and most importantly, to do this work for future generations. I'm not just an AG, I'm a mom of two beautiful boys. And for me, this work is about leaving this country and this state better for them, not worse off. And one of the lawsuits I'm most proud of is the lawsuit we filed to protect public education. As a product of public schools, my two boys in public schools, our public schools in Massachusetts probably would not have opened on time if these Democratic AGs did not file a lawsuit to protect the billions of dollars that should have been going to public schools, because the Trump administration said we don't want to fund them. And we filed that lawsuit, and they decided to change course and to fund our public schools, and they opened on time. And here in Massachusetts, we protected over $200 million for our public schools. I'm proud of that, because what we're doing is building not just a legacy for ourselves and the work that we do, but most importantly, protecting the country that we love so much and doing the work regardless of what letters by someone's name, because we truly are committed to not only our constitutional obligation and responsibility, but also doing the work of true public service. So I'm proud to be with my colleagues doing this work every single day. And for those folks who are feeling despair and hopelessness, especially following what's happening in Minnesota right now, know that you have an AG that has your side, a Democratic one. And if you don't have a Democratic one in your state, well, you should evaluate getting a new one that has your back, because everything we're doing is to defend your rights, to address the cost of living and affordability issues that you're dealing with. And at the end of the day, protect the future of your children. And if you don't have children, to protect the future of this country and to ensure our standing in the world continues to be number one. So I'm just delighted to continue to do this work every single day with my colleagues.
AG Banta, your closing remarks, and also if you can focus on some of the other cases that may not be in the news as much, but that perhaps should be and that you're very proud of.
Thank you, Ben. I just want to echo the thanks for having us. Thanks to my incredible colleagues, A.G. Raul and Campbell. Honored and proud to work with you. You know, my mom is an immigrant from the Philippines, and I was born in the Philippines. Right after I was born, my parents brought me to California because a dictator was rising to power. Martial law was around the corner. Democracy, freedom, human rights, the rule of law, due process, all at stake, and it was all gone within a year of my birth. And so there's more than a little bit of irony in the fact that now, as California's Attorney General, I'm fighting for the rule of law. I'm fighting for rights and freedoms for our people. I'm fighting for democracy. And I take that responsibility very seriously. It's looked like 54 lawsuits in less than a year, winning approximately 80% of the time. Together, we've protected $3 trillion of funding for states that Trump unlawfully tried to withhold. We've protected rights and freedoms he's tried to undermine. And he is escalating, and there's more to come. Of course, we were the first state in the nation where Trump federalized the National Guard and deployed them to ours. That's been in the news, but I am proud that after 6 months of fighting tooth and nail, we were able to end the unlawful federalized deployment of the National Guard, and the Marines were here as well, and return them to the command of Governor Newsom. But one thing that doesn't get the news as much is all of the support that we have protected for the most vulnerable in our communities, the voiceless who rely on housing, on food, on healthcare, on education, on victims of crime funding and support, all of which Trump tried to illegally take away from Californians and from other states across the country. And I've always believed that society should be judged based on how we treat our most vulnerable, our seniors and our children, our sick and our poor. And Trump gets an F. But the AGs have been fighting to secure that support for those who need it, for those who are need that safety net services, and without it would fall below that safety net and be directly in harm's way. So I'm proud of that. That doesn't always make the news, and we'll continue to fight for all Americans, regardless of zip code or income, race or ethnicity, partisanship, political party. We'll fight for everybody because we believe in America, Americans, and all the people that we fight for. I also want to say this. I know this is a time of anxiety, fear, worry. I want to say don't feel hopeless, because you're not helpless. You have the most powerful and most potent power that there is in a democracy, which is people power. Stay engaged, stay enraged about the abuses of power of this administration. It can never be normalized. We can never accept it. We can never be desensitized to it or immune to it. It's wrong, and it's wrong every time. So fighting, when we fight, we'll win. And please remember the 3 C's: courts, crowds, and courage. Courts is where we can seek justice and hold an unlawful president accountable. Crowds is when we turn out and demand what we deserve and decry what is unacceptable and make sure that the people's voice is heard. And courage, you all have it because you're engaged, but courage is contagious. So keep showing it as often and as much as you can, standing up to the bullying, the intimidation, a administration that wants you to be silent, that wants you to take it, to accept it. And we will never accept it. It is never acceptable. So we'll continue to push back. And please know that I and my fellow Democratic Attorneys General, we have a full tank of gas. We're full of energy. We're ready for whatever comes next. And we will continue to be your defenders, your protectors, defend you, protect you, your rights, your freedoms, our democracy, our democratic institutions. There's a lot on the line here. We know that. And we're ready for anything that comes next, and we will always fight for you. You're what give us the heart, the drive, the inspiration, and the motivation to do what we do, and we'll keep fighting for you.
Want to thank everybody for watching our Attorneys General Forum here on the MeidasTouch Network. We should make this an annual, or maybe we even do this twice a year to check in and connect with the people about the great work that all the attorneys general here and the other great attorneys general on the Democratic side who are the ones really fighting for people's rights at this point in time in our history. So thank you, everybody, all of the attorneys general. Andrea Campbell. We appreciate you for joining us. Kwame Raoul, Attorney General from Illinois, and Rob Bonta, Attorney General from California. We appreciate all three Attorneys Generals for joining us, spending a significant time with us today, going through all of these questions that our audience here wanted answered. And everybody, just stay in the fight. Keep the hope. They want to make you feel hopeless. They want to make you feel worn down and just throw in the towel and say, enough. I give up. It's just too much. That's fascism. It's over and over and over again. They try this, it doesn't work. They try that. They try this, they try that. We just have to stand together. People power is going to win the day. And I hate to be corny, but I think love and empathy also will win the day as well. Let's not lose that. Let's just try to be our best selves every day. So thank you to the Attorney Generals. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And make sure you hit subscribe and help us get to 6 million subscribers here. And that is our Attorney General Forum, everyone. Thank you so much.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.